Welcome back, everyone. Can you please take a seat quite quickly as we're running a bit behind schedule? Welcome back. Networking is part of any good conference and probably one of the key takeaways for you. But now we're on to our next session. My name is Cecilia Edström, and as the former CEO of a company focused on infection prevention, I'm a firm believer and totally convinced that prevention is better than cure. But second to prevention, early diagnosis and accurate diagnosis is extremely important for adequate care. Health, in all its dimensions, from the microscopic findings to the global challenges, is the center of gravity of our next speaker's work and passion. In a collaboration with a host of national, European, and UN organizations, as well as civil society, Professor Bettina Borisch applies the skills she has gained through years of basic research and diagnostic work in biomedicine and pathology to improve our common public health. With diligence and creativity, she strives to improve the life and conditions of patients, in particular those with breast cancer. She's a physician, histopathologist, and historian by training, professor of global public health, and CEO of a worldwide NGO network. She approaches life and work with scientific rigor and a humanistic attitude. And she's passionate about health, from individual lifestyle to political decisions, and has stated that health is what happens while you're busy making other plans. So let's give a warm welcome to Professor Bettina Borisch, who will set us on the right track of this thematic session on early detection and diagnosis. Warmly welcome.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for this very kind information. I see you Googled me a bit. Dr. Google tells us a lot. I'm here with the head of AllCan. I'm a member of the board, but as you heard from Cecilia, I will get you through the two visions that I do have on cancer, the microscopic one, and I would call the macroscopic one, the fact that it is happening in our communities, in our world. And when I was asked from Vanilla, who I thank for the invitation, she put this one. Early detection to get a proper diagnosis is vital for getting the right treatment and to survive. I can only say yes. I could stop here and say again, yes. And then we could have another coffee break. But that's not good. So I have three parts for you. First one will be cancer, and I am a pathologist, so there will be a little biology. For those of you who were excellent in biology or are biologists, you can have a nap or a second coffee. Then I'll go to the public health aspect, this is early detection, and then back again to what and how to diagnose. Let's start with cancer biology a bit. I mean, you all know it. While I'm speaking here, every one of us has a little cancer cell. Every cell in our body divides and then has to die, because otherwise we would blow and get like this. Most of our cells divide quite fast. Our skin cells, every morning we rub off tons of them, and they have to divide quickly. Our blood cells are dividing very fast, and then they're out of the system. But while doing so busy circulating, we call it cell cycle dividing, there are always mistakes, always. So like here on the sketch, the pink one makes it a little bit red. That doesn't mean that this is a cancer cell, but it could be the first step, because you have one mutation that runs it faster. And then there may be, for the same cell, another mistake that happens while it divides again. And so you may accumulate mutations that one day or the other are so many that's a cancer cell. So, because this happens today, here and there and there and there, everywhere, we are still very fine, don't worry. What happens usually is our body, look on this side here, our body knows what is good and what is not fitting. And so when there is a cell with a mutation or DNA damage, will be recognized and put either to the repair machine, we have a repair machine, or to cell death. And then it's okay. And that happens all the time, because that's what our body is able to do due to immune system, due to recognition systems, very well. But the longer we go, the more we can have mutations, and we can have groups of cells with the same mutation, and then there may be so many mutations in one clone, what we say, that they become really what we call cancerous, and cancerous means they invade, they go to other places, they move, they do what we call invasion. They can invade vessels like here, and then they can move around through the bloodstream everywhere. So, as I said, it takes a long time. We want to live long time, and we do live longer and longer. The longer we live, the higher the risk to get solid cancers, because it needs all these. The red one is breast cancer. There's a little good news in these. The older we get, the higher the risk of getting cancer. There's a good one. Once you're above 80, 85, 90, the risk goes down again. But, well, you have to make it. Cancer isn't one thing. If I talk to patients, it's sometimes a word like one. At a microscopic and biological level, we have about 300 different types of cancer. Very different. So different that you think you don't look at the same disease. We have cancers that grow very slowly, like, for example, chronic lymphocytic leukemia. It behaves like a chronic disease. It's more like rheumatoid arthritis. It's always there. It comes and goes. But you will have the same life expectancy as almost all other people around you. Same thing for some types of breast cancer, the one that express progesterone, estrogen receptors and negative for HER2. They grow slowly and take time to develop from very, very small little clone of cancer cells to a 1 centimeter one. Other slow-growing cancers are colon cancers, and most types of prostate cancer. But we also have completely different diseases that are the fast-growing cancers. For example, certain breast cancer types grow very fast, the triple negative, for example. And in the leukemia field, like lymphocytic leukemia on one side, we also have the other side, AL, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. It starts, and for example, Burkitt lymphoma, and now you can see it grow on the jaw of children. It starts, and 2 weeks later, you have a note like this. Lung cancer is also, most types of lung cancer grow faster, and some rare cancers. So we have different ways, let's say, of looking at cancer. If I say 300 types, it is the biological subtypes. And we have to, with all these different behaviors, we classify tumors. You know, pathologists love to classify. Whatever they see, they will put it into 3 boxes and 4 boxes. So one way is to just say this cancer is from this organ. But as you have seen, if we say from breast, there you have already over 20 different types, and they can be very different in terms of growing speed, then also of treatment. If I say specific type, it's a biotype that you look at the microscope and do all the biological workup. And then what we always do is we do a grading, and grading means we try to look if the tumor, the cancer is aggressive or not. Meaning if it grows fast, if it looks as the tissue of origin, the less it looks like the tissue of origin, the more aggressive it is according to what we think. And then we can also clinically say how fast is the tumor already in its growth. more and more we really look to the biology, and the more biomarkers we use, the more different ways of classifying we get. It is true, if you have a new biomarker, you will look through all the tumors, and then you say, those ones put in this side and these in that side. Let's have a look at a very slow-growing cancer. Cancer, as I said, take years to develop, most of them, and occur in people as people get older. This long process is due to the fact that we have a good protective mechanism in our bodies. And in a colon cancer, for example, we think it takes 10 to 15 years to develop, and we know a precancerous lesion, which is the polyp, adenomatous polyp. And these polyps will not all turn into cancer, but some may become cancerous, invasive. So then also, when there is a cancer, it will depend very much on the person, the health of the person, the general status, how and where it will go. Here a little picture. A polyp looks like a little bulb, and if you go into the colon and look at it, you will see them. And by the long time, you can have in this growing polyp some cells that what we would say look ugly, look like cancerous. We call that dysplasia. And it's good to get rid of this polyp at that time here, cut it off and then finished. But if you don't take it out, these ugly-looking precancerous cancerous cells will invade here. And then this is, at the long run, invasive cancer will get access to vessels and spread around. And that's where we have the possibility to do early detection in cancers that grow very slow and that have precancerous lesions. That's where we do early detection. Again, in colon cancer, let's go on with this example. Colon cancer, we do have symptoms. If you have, for example, frequent diarrheas or the other way around, constipation, if you have blood in the stool, and if you have thin stool, like these are all symptoms that could hint for a possible colon cancer. But it's only a symptom, doesn't mean that you have it, can be a polyp as well, or multiple polyps. So here you go and start with detection and screening. What measures do we have to look if you have a preneoplastic lesion or you may have something you haven't even had symptoms for? We can do a coloscopy, look into the whole colon. It's invasive, yes, not very fun to have. I did it twice, not really fun to have, but it, at the same time, can also remove these little polyps, if they're ones, small ones, and can tell you, take a biopsy and look at, was it really cancer or a precancer? Other tests that are less invasive is look at blood in the stool with different methods, either DNA or immunological methods. Now, what is screening? Because I talked early detection. What is screening? What does screening mean? Screening means it's a strategy to look for unrecognized cancers or risk factors. Risk factors, for example, in newborn, if they have a risk factor, or in a population of women, look if they have BRCA1 genes, so they know they have an 80% higher risk than other women to develop breast cancer in their whole life. So screen is look at unrecognized conditions. And this means also you look at people who feel extremely healthy and well. And then comes someone with a medical method and says, we will look if you have cancer, you know. You have to be very careful with screening. If someone has a symptom, it's the one thing, but if you go for a screening, a population-based, you look at people who are healthy and have no symptoms. So you have to be very sure how you do it, and I will come up with the main asks you have to have for screening. You can do screening on an individual. You can go as a person to see a doctor and say, please screen me for all these cancers, colon, I want to know if there's anything. That's what some people do. What the other proposal from public health side is a population-based screening, where you say the population at risk is so-and-so, and we will offer them a screening in a regular way and a regular follow-up. So if you do screening for a population, you do it because you think that you can do an intervention and that you can reduce mortality and reduce suffering from a disease, or detect a disease at a stage where you have less impact of treatment. And to do so, you have to really have the highest levels of quality. And these are the very old demands from WHO for every screening program, but I think they are still really valid. You can only make a population-based screening program if it concerns a large percent of the population. You will not screen for rare diseases. Second, there should be a treatment. It's not worthwhile screening for a disease where you cannot offer anything. And the worst thing, I think, is there should be facilities for treatment. I have seen a very rich lady, Swiss lady, who wants to have a mammography screening program in one African country. And I always try to say, please, it's a country where they cannot offer treatment. I think it's unethical to do a screening program without offering anything afterwards. And as we have seen, it's only possible to screen if there is a latent phase of disease, if there are these 10 to 15 years or 2 to 3 years where you can discover early stages or not yet cancers. And there should be a test, and the test should be acceptable. For example, is coloscopy acceptable for everyone? Mammography, And you know, you have to have a test that is acceptable. Otherwise, people would say, oh, come on, I'm not going to suffer for something I'm not even sure what it helps me. And you should have a good understanding of the disease, how it goes forward, and when you can treat and if you can treat. And there should be a policy on how to treat afterwards, because otherwise it should not be you discovered a disease and now becomes a big discussion. And then also the economical aspect, the cost of early detection versus the cost of medical expenditure in the whole has to be calculated. And if you start with a population-based screening program, it should be an ongoing thing. It should not be once a single shot and then that's it. You really have to plan it for the long run. So, I'm in Sweden. You have been pioneers, ladies. Not only you, but also your medical staff. You have been the leading ones in mammography screening. Pilot phases here in Sweden started early as in the 80s in some of the counties. And it's due to the fact that in Sweden there is such a long history of mammography screening, population-based, that we have figures that, because I think I'm right, you correct me, that all women get an invitation, 40 to 70, and are offered a free mammography. Have you already? Yes, at the right time range. So you played a very important role, because other countries looked at the data, looked at the figures, and now even 2018, Laszlo Tabar could publish that women who participated in mammography screening here in Sweden had a statistically significant 41 reduction in risk. He looked at those who participated, not that who got the invitation, because there's always a difference between getting the invitation and or going to a mammogram. And a reduction of deaths, as well as 25% reduction in the rate of advanced breast cancer. So persons got an earlier stage where there is less important treatment. He has shown that, and it's your data, ladies, your facts. And the thing is, I tell you a little story, and I do have the time perhaps. I was in Switzerland talking to patients about mammography screening, and another doctor was there, an oncologist. He was asked, why do we not have in Switzerland, like in Sweden, a mammography in the whole country? And he said, we don't need that in Switzerland because we have so good oncologists. You can imagine that in the room there was a little quiet moment. And why do I tell this story? I tell this story because I think if we go here into this, if you don't do anything, no screening, deaths will increase. If you do screening only, you will get the mortality down a bit. With only therapy, you will get it down also. But if you combine screening and good therapy, you will get a reduction. So what I want to say is, do not oppose treatment and early detection. It's one thing. You have to put it together. And now, last part, diagnosis. Diagnosis. Once you have screened and you have an indication that there is something, you have to make a diagnosis. And a diagnosis mainly goes, first of all, through images, like radiologists do images, and then it comes under the microscope and it becomes to the biology. So once the first steps have been done and you have seen a node or a tumor somewhere, then the next step would be we go to the biology. We take out a little bit of tissue, which is mainly done by core biopsies or small needles, and then we analyze the tissue, its biology, its DNA, and how it looks. The good thing, what everybody wants, is having a needle somewhere isn't so funny, and it needs kind of intervention. Good would be just to take out blood and see if there's something. But these both things are different. You have one information from the tissue and you have a different one from a blood sample. So what do you get from the histology? A lot of information can taken out of a small little bit of tissue. You can say what tumor type it is. You can say where it goes, if it's infiltrating, where it's infiltrating. You can talk about how the body reacts. Are there lymphocytes? Are there immune cells attacking? Are there macrophages? Or is there no at all? Is there a capsule? Is there fibrosis around? That's seen when you look. And then you can also look, a tumor is not the same. It has parts that are growing fast, others less, and this can be looked at in a tissue biopsy. And you can use so-called biomarkers. You look at growth speed, you look at expression of proteins and receptors, and you can also look if in the tumor area is what we have seen with the polyp, pre-neoplastic lesion. Is there already small little cancer focuses around, which is also an important information. Yeah, and all this is done by microscopical and DNA in situ hybridization, in immunohistochemistry, in all these methods, mainly done in molecular pathology, histopathology together. And then they look at what I said, how fast it is growing, the grade, the stage, the mutations, the prognostic markers. And sometimes you look at things that may be common to all cancers, and you always learn new things if you look at new markers and compare different cancers, for example. So far about, very quickly, diagnostic. There's far more to talk about diagnostic measures, but I would like to end up with my head of public health by saying for over 6 years, no, 7 years now, I have been working on the European Commission initiative on breast cancer. it is based on, and we have to say our politicians are not that bad, on the European Parliament's resolution 2003 and 2006 on breast cancer. Very first time that the European Parliament did a resolution on a disease, saying this is so important because it's so frequent among European women. We have to see that all women get access to good early detection, treatment, care, and integration into work. So I end up with the main asks. What we need is, we need equity and access to diagnosis and early detection for all women in Europe and outside. I'm also working outside Europe. It should be always quality assured. It should be quality assured programs, but also labs, laboratories should be quality assured. And I think it's important to be very transparent about the policies you put in place, why you do it, which method you do, and very, very important is, I think, we all have to be aware of the fact and when something is implemented. So all of us are here, and I think we work together on this awareness. I thank you very much with a picture from Geneva, our jet d'eau in the Lake of Geneva. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Bettina, for that enlightening presentation. And we'll carry on with the two separate sessions after this. But I wanted to ask you one or two questions before we wrap up. And that is, politicians are often worried about overspending. And we have all become semi-doctors by Googling. And there's a lot of biomarkers out there that we can test for. What do you see are the main aspects of this? Slowly growing cancer, aggressive cancers, biomarkers, etc. What are the main trade-offs in this?
Trade-offs in what sense?
Trade-off. What kind of aspects do you take into account? You've been onto it earlier. There's some ethical aspects and there's some economic aspects.
Yes, I think that we can make the economical case for cancer prevention and cancer treatment. We can make it, and there are good health economists to do that. But I think more importantly, we should have the case that health is a human right and a common good. In countries such as Switzerland and Sweden, I always get the two mixed up when American friends ask me where I come from. I would say we are able to have health as a very high good. And health, I underline health. We should not wait for becoming ill, but we should invest a lot in prevention and later on early detection. Because again, we can make the case of economy. If you detect early, you really do far better with the economy than having an unhealthy population. That has
Totally agree. And do you think the EU is spending enough on prevention, or we should shift some of the funds?
I think that the EU is now, with my friend Stella Kyriakidis, quite well going to prevention. She herself knows too good what it means to have had 3 cancers. It is difficult to move a classical biomedical model where most countries spend 95 to 99% into clinical care, that means wait until people are really ill, to something where countries spend more than 1, 2, 3, 5% to prevention. But we are on the way, I think, yes.
Great, thank you very much. We could carry on for a lot longer, but I think we need to pave the way and leave the floor to other topics like prostate cancer and lung cancer, I believe, in this room. And then there's a parallel session in the other room, which I cannot remember, but you all have programs, so you should be able to get guidance from that. Thank you.